Oh, okay, everyone. Oh, sorry. That's right. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Nyfield, Democratic Services Officer, and I will take the committee through the first two agenda items this evening. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team, i.e. me, will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place, i.e. Angela. Item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies? Nope. Item 2, election of chairman. Can I have the nomination for the election of a chairman, please?
Can I nominate Councillor Wales?
Thank you. And is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Wales. Did you want to come up and take your position as chairman?
I didn't know we're back at drama school with a script. Right, item 3, election of vice chairman. Can I have a nomination for the election of vice chairman?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Harwood.
Is that seconded?
I second Councillor Harwood.
Is that agreed, members? Lovely, thank you very much. Excuse me, I'm just reducing the buzz in my ears. Hang on, thanks, that's lovely. That's better. Right, so item 4. Are there any urgent items? There are no urgent items. Any visiting members? Item 5. Can't see any, so no visiting members. Disclosures by members and officers. Item 6. Are there any disclosures? Yes, Councillor Cox.
I just want to disclose that I'm involved with a community interest company that's had the receipt of a grant from the Cobtree Charity Trust. I don't believe there's a conflict, but for the purpose of record, wanted to disclose it.
Okay, that's for noting. Okay. Item 7, disclosures of lobbying. Look to members individually, clockwise around the room. 1, 2, 3, 4. No lobbying. Thank you. Item 8, to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt item. I move that all items are taken in public. Is that agreed? Okay. Item 9. Right. The minutes of the meeting held on 27th of March 2024. The only parts of the minutes that can be discussed is their accuracy, the difficulty being that none of the 4 of us was there, so we haven't really a clue. So I would move that we just take these minutes as agreed, as read. Yeah. Okay. There's no matters arising. Presentation of petitions. There are no petitions this evening. Item 11. Are there any questions for any member of the public? There are no questions on item 11. Item 12, questions from members to the chairman. Well, they didn't know who it was, but there are still no questions. Item 13, here we go. Right, Cobtree Manor estate financial position. Before we do that, though, I'd like to congratulate those running Cobtree estate on the award of the Green Flag, which I saw on the press release today. So, congratulations to everybody. If you could pass those on from the committee to everybody involved there, that would be fantastic. So, on the financial side, though, introduced by Paul Holland, Senior Finance Manager. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So what I'm proposing to do is to go through the financial position section of the report first, take any questions you may have on that, and then I'll move on to the cash flow projection section. So starting with the financial position, the table at 3.1 in the report summarises the position as at 30th of June, along with the outturn from last year, just for comparison purposes. There is a more detailed breakdown at Appendix 1, and as you can see, there's currently a small surplus of just over 2,500 against the profile budget. There's no significant issues I need to bring to your attention at this point, but I thought I'd just highlight a few points for you. So this is the first full year of the new golf course contract, and the income from this contract is significantly less than we were previously receiving. So that's one of the principal reasons we're forecasting a small deficit for this year. Parking income at the park is slightly down, which reflects a small fall in visitor numbers to date this year compared to last year. We needed to undertake a dilapidations assessment at Kent Life, and that's a £5,000 cost that I don't think we'd initially budgeted for. And we also had to undertake a structural engineering assessment at Garden Cottage. This is one of the residential properties on the estate. Maidstone Property Holdings managed that on behalf of the estate. There were reports of subsidence, and depending on the outcome of the investigations, we may need to undertake some underpinning works there. So that concludes my summary of this section. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Do we have any idea how much the underpinning might be and how much we should set aside in the contingency?
No, I believe the investigations are still ongoing, so we haven't got a feel for the costs yet. But obviously, as soon as we hear anything, we'll bring that back to you as an item.
But we're confident it will be covered by contingency.
I can answer that, Chair. Yes, we have a small contingency, depending on the final cost of the recommended works, and we've also alerted our insurance company, should we need to claim on the insurance for those works to be completed.
Thanks for that clarification. Is there anything else on this item, members? No? Thank you very much. So let's move to the recommendations. One that the current... Sorry.
There's a second section of my report. I was going to cover that off, and then so just to cover off the second section of my report, which is the cash flow projection for the next 10 years, which is shown at Appendix 2. So the key messages and assumptions from that one are that we've increased running costs by 5% annually in the projection, and we're looking to possibly make savings of £25,000 going forward. The figures for the golf course income, they reflect the nature of the new contract. So rather than a straight annual rental sum that we used to receive, we now receive a combination of a base rent with a turnover-based element. Clearly, this turnover element comes with a risk, but the new contractor has a good record of hitting turnover targets at their other sites, so that does give us some assurance going forward. And I think, as Mike will reference in his estate update report, numbers of rounds played have shown a positive increase in the first year of the new contract, so that's a good start. There are some capital works that are going to be needed over the next couple of years, so that means the estate will operate a deficit before returning to a surplus, but we've got enough funds in the bank account to cover that. I think the key message is that we're going to need a new player at some point in the future, and at the present the estate doesn't have enough of its own funds to cover this. But officers will look at funding options, and these will be presented back to the committee in due course. For information, the current play area dates back to, I think, around 2014 and cost around £700,000 at the time. So just to give you some context. I think overall there should be stability going forward now with all the contracts that are in place, and the estate will operate at a small surplus for most of the period, and we'll retain these for future investment. So again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. My question is really around the playground renovation. So here it's showing the bank balance looks like that we're expecting that to come from cash held. Do you think there's any possibility that we would be able to find external funding for any of that?
I think, yeah, possibly. I know we've discussed about talking to Cobtree Charity Trust for the freeholders in the past, certainly, as one option. I don't know if there's any other further sources that you've identified beyond that. So I think that would probably be our first port of call initially. And yeah, see what they say and go from there. I mean, obviously, again, potentially a loan from the council of some sort because they funded the car park improvement works. But again, that's another potential option going forward. But yeah, I think there's certainly things we can look into once we've got an idea of the cost and what sort of thing you would actually want. So,
Councillor Hubbard.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't really certain where I came in because the points I want to raise kind of straddle both of the reports on the papers. But I think one of the issues I wish to raise does look at the cash flow projection issue. That there is potential through some current initiatives such as biodiversity net gain to lever in potentially some additional funding, and there are some opportunities on some parts of the site, but they're tied into current leases and so on. But there is also some opportunity within the main Parkland site. I mean, when we were on site recently, we were talking about the fact that the ponds on the site are very prone to drying out, and past attempts to get grant funding for new ponds on the site had failed. But that's exactly the kind of project that biodiversity net gain could lever in some funding for some works which will actually improve the landscape, the biodiversity in the site, and potentially enable us to sell some credits. It would also help potentially with woodland management, which is another kind of significant management cost in terms of right management, in terms of removal of non-native shrubs such as laurel and so on. So just really wanted to flag up that perhaps we look at some options sooner rather than later, because Maidstone Borough Council on its own estate is looking at and currently looking at potential sites where we could enter into B&G agreements, and I think there's a lot of opportunity potentially at Cobtree.
To you, gentlemen.
I'm not sure if that was a question, Councillor Harwood, but yes, all noted, and yes, we will look into those options and bring a report to a future meeting.
Yes, the question is, would you agree with me it's a good idea? Yes, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. The area that's currently leased, I believe, by young farmers, when does that tenure come up?
I think that's 2030, Councillor Cox.
Are there any other questions more about the finance from members? No, thank you very much. In that case, shall we note the recommendations? One, that the current financial position be noted. Is that agreed? And to note that the updated cash flow projection be noted. Agreed? Okay, that's those two. Thank you very much. Item 14, Cobtree Estate update, introduced by Mike Evans. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you to members who attended the tour last week of the estate. That was very helpful to get our eyes and ears on the ground and bring the report to life a little bit. As you'll see in the report, the Manor Park continues to see good visitor numbers. The increased numbers we saw during the pandemic have fallen off, but numbers are still healthy. And the new cafe coming into operation later this summer will hopefully increase those numbers further. The Cobtree themed Elmer the Elephant from the Elmer Parade in 2021 has been donated to the estate, and will take pride of place in the cafe, so that will again attract more visitors. And operationally, the new container for the park ranger has obtained planning permission, and that will be installed soon. At the golf course, the visitor and participation numbers, as Mr. Holland has mentioned, are very strong since the new tenant took management of the venue, which is really pleasing. This is within their first year of tenure, and we look forward to seeing those numbers increase year on year. They too have their own refurbishment works to complete this winter or sooner, so that will be again very good for the site and will bring forward more visitor numbers as they really get their feet under the table there. At Kent Life, we've seen a slight decrease on numbers, largely attributable to the weather and the slow start to the summer weather. And the thatch barn repairs referenced at paragraph 210 have now been completed, so that's an update on the written report. And as seeing them on Friday, they're a big improvement to that thatch roof on that building, and provide protection for that asset. Again, happy to take any questions from any members.
Thank you very much, and yes, thank you too for the tour around, because it was really useful, informative, and scorching hot. Thank you for choosing the hottest day of the year to walk round outside for 4 hours. Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Within the report, there's a reference under the Cobtree Golf Course section at 2.8, where it's talking about expanding the size of the pond and water harvesting from that. Because that's an engineering kind of piece of work and it's in the OMB and so on, and presumably that will require a planning application, because and if we do look at a planning application, there will be all sorts of things like biodiversity safeguards on how much water is being taken out and when and how it's being taken out without sucking the great crested newts up with it and so on. So I kind of just any information you give me on a kind of the progress of any application therein.
Just wait for the bell there. At the moment, I don't think there's applications been put in. The tenant is still just months into their tenure. It was an idea they included in their application. It's something they're keen to do because the golf course suffers from being really waterlogged in the winter and having to close for a number of days, which is not good for the golfers and for business. And in the summer, it's really dry, and they use mains water to keep the greens in operation. So it's an idea they've got to harvest the water in the winter and then use it to feed the golf course in the summer. Of course, as you rightly say, Councillor Harwood, it will need to go via planning, and all considerations will need to be given to that, and they'll involve the right people for that application. They have an ecologist on salary within the business that looks at all the ecology across the 12 golf courses they manage, so they have access to that expertise in-house and will call in other expertise when they need it. From a property point of view, the lease puts this on them to bring forward as tenant. We as landlord will have a right to say what they do and don't do to the site, which is separate to our role as planning authority. So those three things will work together in any scheme that comes forward.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. There's lots and lots of farms with irrigation ponds all over the borough, and some are very successful in terms of landscape and biodiversity, and some are not. And so, we'll wait and see the detail. Actually looking at that site, it may not be an extension to the existing water body. It may well be a better located, brand new water body, and new water feature might have less of a negative impact and more of an enhancement. But I will kind of await anything that comes out of them. But if perhaps yourself and Alan and so on can be part of any of the discussions when they're kind of master planning and steer them in the right direction, I mean, there might be a win-win. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, councillors? I have just one myself. We talked about the new operator of the golf course. Could you just perhaps outline, the report didn't mention anything to do with the old operator and the position we're in with them and chasing up on monies outstanding and things like that? I think that should be really in the report somewhere.
I'm not sure if we can answer that here, Chair, without going into part 2.
Right.
I wouldn't want to prejudice any ongoing discussions with anyone by putting details into the public domain without checking with 151 and proper officer first.
Or is there things that can be done in part 1 without prejudicing? If not, then do we go into part 2 or wait for another occasion? We don't really have the papers to go with that in part 2. Okay, I'll save that for an offline discussion then. But if we could have an update offline, then that would be handy. Thank you.
Yeah, I can email an update to you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. On that note, if there's nothing else on this section of the reports, then I'm going to move to the recommendation that the Cobtree Estate update be noted. Is that agreed? Agreed too. Thank you very much. That's item 14, and that's the last item. So thank you very much. Meeting closed. Yeah, 16:46. 15:46. Thank you very much.